to start off, 10, 15 years ago, we had a lot less interest globally in renewable energy. Solar energy, wind energy were bubbling. We thought it was hot, but it wasn't the hot market that it is today. Today it's a hugely hot market. And basically it was very hard to see the potential that was around the corner. It was very hard to see the cost drops that were coming. Even the experts kept underestimating the cost drops and underestimating the growth year after year. What technologies or what part of the clean tech transition do you think might be at a similar stage today where maybe it's bubbling, maybe it's interesting, but we're underestimating the potential and where things are headed in the next 10 to 15 years? So this is an open question for everybody here on the panel.
Okay, being the storage guy in the room, of course, I think that storage is exactly in the situation where solar and wind was.
The sound is not...
This sound is better now? Okay. So I just said I'm, first of all, the storage guy in the room. But secondly, I think that storage is today exactly at the same point where solar power and wind power was decades ago. It's not a mature technology right now. There's still a lot of cost potential, first of all. And secondly, storage is the missing piece for the further deployment of renewable energies. Because as you all know, renewable energy generation causes volatility on the production side, and storage is one possible way to manage this problem. So I think that storage still has a great potential for the coming years.
I'm sure you look at the forecast for energy storage growth, decentralized grid scale. Do you see these forecasts as being too conservative, like solar and wind were before, or do you think they're maybe tracking the market well now?
Well, I think the tipping point has been already reached in some geographies. The tipping point is at the end of the day depending on, first of all, the power price, and secondly also the price of storage, the battery prices. And in some geographies it already makes economic sense, in others it doesn't. But with, first of all, renewable energy generation getting more competitive and cheaper, with storage getting more competitive and cheaper, and with the trend that retail power prices are still increasing all over the world as a trend, it will at the end of the day be a global phenomenon, which we will see there.
Paul, do you see practical action incorporating storage more and more? Do you see that as a plan?
And I think Christoph's absolutely right. I think storage is a key issue. We do a lot of work with off-grid communities, and while the sun shines, of course, the electricity is generated, but stable storage is definitely a key challenge. But if I might, I guess maybe it's not on the agenda, but I think it should be on the agenda, clean cooking. So almost 3 billion people cook with unimproved biomass. They burn dirty fuels, and as a consequence, they inhale indoor air pollution. Indoor air pollution kills 4 million people a year, more than the combined totals of HIV and AIDS, malaria and TB put together. But clean indoor cooking is not on the agenda in the way that it should be. And look at that. So look at that through two lenses. Look at it through a needs lens. There's a need for the world to grasp this as an issue. But also I think it grasp this as a business opportunity. Those people, those off-grid communities, spend collectively $27 billion a year on their energy bills. Now that's a big business opportunity. Who's somebody who can break through and find a sustainable, clean energy cooking source for off-grid communities.
It's a really interesting point. I mean, I think solar, wind, battery storage, they all come from highly developed markets, highly developed countries. And when we, covering clean tech for a decade, when you start to get into the coverage of off-grid and developing countries, you start to see this all of a sudden, the need for clean cooking, and all of a sudden it becomes a part of the conversation. And there's a huge disconnect. So I think that's a really good point, really interesting point. GE, we had someone write an article for us years ago, said GE wants to sell you everything. GE's in almost all markets, it seems, right? So you've been in wind, you've been in solar, you've been all over the place.
Sure.
You know, you must be always looking at what's the cutting edge, what's on the horizon. What's your vision for, you know, what you need to be paying more and more attention to in the next few years?
So at GE, we're focusing on a number of issues. One of them is to, you know, we have a dimension as a big conglomerate to actually we're powering the world and we're providing power through multiple sectors. Renewable is definitely one of the leading sectors that we're looking at: onshore wind, offshore wind, hydro, as well as solar. We're looking also at the conventional electricity because that still is a valid business in many parts of the world, but also providing it in a clean way, which is very important. Another aspect that we're also focusing on as GE is actually moving people safely, which is aviation is a very big sector that we're looking at it. And believe it or not, this is an area where we need to start looking at implementing clean technologies and how can we drive the efficiency of that, as well as saving lives, which is the healthcare sector, the domain that we look at, both the conventional healthcare, which is delivering healthcare at the conventional using, you know, the MRs, the CTs, and so on, in addition to start focusing on gene therapy, focusing on the gene technology, and how can you actually revolutionize this. One aspect that I think so that goes across all of these in GE that we're trying to improve is the digital technologies, and how can you implement digital technologies to improve outcome for power provider, improve outcome for hospitals and patient care, as well as improve outcome for, you know, air traffickers, as an example. And how can we utilize this technology in a horizontal way that goes across to provide you valid information and data to improve the business case, the model, and the scalability. If you look at today as an example, you mentioned earlier, you know, developed country versus developing countries. What is the trigger that will help some of these to move toward more renewable energy versus conventional? Again, it's the economy of scale, and you have to develop a valid business model that will make sense for them to move in that direction.
Well, this was a question for later, a more pointed one-on-one, but you sound a lot like Jeff Immelt sounded in Chicago several years ago when introducing Power Up. I was lucky to see this presentation, this push into the industrial internet. And for everybody, but I guess starting with GE, you know, you introduced this software and intelligence focus to wind turbines that increased efficiency by what might seem like a small percentage until you see what the effect is, and it's a huge dramatic effect. And also improves uptime, and you also focus on improving uptime in hospitals. Can you speak a little bit more about this power-up technology, similar technologies GE has been developing, and what kind of effects you've seen from this more intelligent industrial internet?
Absolutely. So Jeff was obviously the pioneer of this whole digital technology. He was our former CEO, a great pioneer, and privileged to be even acquainted with him.
You sounded like him.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So the power-up technology, just to think about it, it's a technology and an enablement tool that will allow you actually to enable predictive technologies to assess how your power plant is performing. So it's a number of software and hardware embedded technology that will give you the predictive measurement. Exactly what's your output, how well your power plant is functioning, when is going to be the best time to service it, how frequently do you need to service it, as well as how can you increase the efficiency and the output. And if you look at it, you know, people sometimes take this for granted, but it have a huge impact. If you're able to increase the output of a power plant by 10%, that is huge in terms to the customer. He's going to be able to increase his return at least 20% higher ROI for the customer. It's going to be able to increase your output to the purchaser by 10%. More people are going to have access to electricity. If you look at it in a scale as an example, just to make sure that we put the numbers relevant. In the US, we have 9,000 turbines, the 1.5x platform, which is a 1.5 megawatt. Let's see, for these 9,000 turbines, we just improved by 1% output. The 1% output is going to be able to generate at least 430,000 megawatt hour. That's enough to power 33,000 homes in the US with the use of the average electricity. And that's only 1% output increase. Imagine if you do 10% output increase. Obviously, this technology is is new. It's going to be helping everyone, not only the technology provider, but as well as the developer. When they plan this model, what is the best, input and output information that you're going to take that will help you to maximize your energy output and energy yield? How can you utilize the speed of wind? Because this is many things that are related to environment. The speed of wind that you're going to have, the solar, when is the wind blowing at the best time? How can you utilize the most output of it? And equally try to find, how can you increase and boost the performance of your machine to get the best out of it? In addition, it will tell you, when do you really need to service the machine? You really don't need to open the machine every while and then if you don't need to.
And the software behind this, is it a continual development? Did you develop it years ago and now it's working and it's great, or is it continually?
Absolutely. So we've developed a platform that's called the Predix platform, which is a cloud platform that you can actually implement a number of softwares to actually look at it. So the asset performance management, which is the tool I'm speaking about, that actually measure for you the outcome, increased productivity, gives you an assessment of when is the downtime and how long and what do you need to do. This is something that's existing. It's already on the cloud platform. Any power provider can use it, and it can be implemented across the GE portfolio, not only in power, and we're continuously improving it. Today we have it on the scale of the wind turbine, and we're developing something that includes the entire wind farm, including the BOP scope. So how can you get a better visualization of how your wind farm is actually producing? When is the best output, the best yield that you're going to get, and increase the efficiency and output and productivity to the customers, because that's going to be a major measure.
So, when I was in high school, I thought I would never have a cell phone. I thought, what's the point? What's the need? I think 20 years ago, none of us probably thought we were going to have a phone that does so much on it. Part of that is hardware development, but so much of that is this software development that's just hard to explain and it's hard to see what's the practical path for this sometimes. So generally speaking, how do you see a growth in intelligence, in software, deeper software, more sophisticated software, data gathering, sensors? How do you see this growth in intelligence transforming clean tech industries in the next 10 to 15 years? And I'll start with sort of an LED focus. How does this more intelligent software and technology improve your research capabilities for lighting, and also how do you see that as transforming the lighting sector in complementary to LEDs?
LED. I think for LED we are calling smart lighting. Basically, using LED lighting, we can do communication. It's called Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is many people use Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi, bandwidth is limited, and if IoT is coming, IoT use internet a lot, So in that case, Wi-Fi is almost saturated, bandwidth saturated. So only choice.
Internet of Things.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So in that case, only choice is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is no limitation of the bandwidth, visible light communication. So so Wi-Fi means we can use LED lighting or laser lighting. Laser lighting is 3 orders higher than the LED Wi-Fi. LED Wi-Fi is 10 times faster than the current Wi-Fi. So I think so IoT is coming means we have to use a Wi-Fi in the future, and also.
And on the research side, do you see this intelligence, this growing intelligence, as speeding up the research process or helping you to discover more?
I don't know. AI, AI is currently AI, is just a lot of data storage, and the data storage they can, using a lot of data they can do something, but not original idea, So all kind of invention come from the original idea, crazy idea. So in that case, AI still takes time to do those,
Crazy ideas.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Well, going from crazy ideas to practical action, Paul, you're obviously on the ground level in a very, the last mile, the off-grid, the further, the further reaches, not the early adopters of the world necessarily. How do you see this intelligence and this, more sophisticated solar, wind, clean tech, storage, making its way into the deeper?
It is a rapidly growing sector. The real game changer that people are looking at the moment is the pay-as-you-go solar home system. So a simple capital expenditure that's taken on by a company, installed in a house, grid connected, so connected through a chip, and then consumers buy the electricity, and as they pay for the electricity, eventually they pay for the whole of the equipment. But the intelligence, the data that's gathered, so this is a sector that's growing. In the last 4 years, it's gone from a $3 million industry to a $300 million industry. So
pay-as-you-go solar.
Massive expansion, pay-as-you-go solar. But the information that's being generated from these growing number of solar systems is going to be invaluable. Invaluable for the next generation of solar home systems, but also the next generation of the consumer gadgets that people will be more credit-worthy for buying. So today it's lights and mobile phone chargers. Tomorrow it's going to be high energy efficiency TVs, irons, refrigerators, all of the appliances that will transform people's lives and the energy sector along the way. So this is a huge game changer.
When I sit back and I try to really reflect on this, this move towards more intelligent technology, especially for this panel, for example, I just kept thinking like, it's the ABCs. We think we got smart technology, but it's the ABCs really that we have. It's like we'll get the smarter technology after we get the ABCs down, right? So it's hard to envision where we go. You need these kind of brilliant geniuses. Sonnen, you guys are leading edge on technology over and over with storage. Now, the hot word of the past year maybe is blockchain, right? And you guys have an innovative project with Tenet to use blockchain for for prosumer use in your Sonnen community. Can you explain that better than I did? More clearly what you're doing with Tenet?
Of course I can. Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand that.
Of course you can.
Of course I can.
Okay.
That's not a big deal. The challenge is not so big. Okay, let me try it. Yeah. First of all, it's important to understand that we have in Germany 10,000 of residential storage systems deployed.
Sonnen has.
Sonnen, yeah. 25,000, something like this, right? Over the last couple of years. Only last year we deployed almost 10,000 systems in Germany. These storage systems are not only batteries. They are intelligent systems, they have a software, they are all online and we can remote control them, right? This means at the same time that we can do much more beyond just self-consumption for an individual home. So what we did in 2015 is that we connected all of our residential customers into a virtual power plant and started in the first step to do peer-to-peer trading. This means that we buy power from customers who right now have excess solar power and sell it in real time, peer-to-peer, to another customer who currently needs grid power. So we allowed our customers to literally share excess solar power via our Sonnen community. That's the first step. The second step, and then we are getting closer to Tenet, the second step is that these assets integrated in the power plant can be perfectly used to deploy grid services, because it's all about flexibility in the grid today. And talking about 25,000 systems, one system has an average 4 kW, 4 kilowatt power, so we're talking about 100 megawatt here, which we can use in order to stabilize the grid. In other words, if there's too much power, we can take power out of grid immediately. And if there's not enough power in the grid, we can re-inject power to the grid.
You can say in a decentralized way, you provide a giant battery to the grid.
Absolutely. And the good thing is that we can aggregate that nationwide. So we have a huge power plant, but we can also do this on a regional base. And now Tenet comes into play. Tenet is one of the largest transmission grid operators in Germany, and they have the transmission grid coming from the north of Germany to the south. Why is this important? Well, in the north, we have a lot of wind power, onshore, offshore, right? But in the south, we have the industry. So their challenge is to bring wind power from the north to the south, and sometimes they simply don't have the capacities to do so. in the grid. Yeah? So formerly, they simply literally switched the wind parks off and still had to pay for the power generation, but nobody could use the power. And now we are using thousands of residential storage systems in order to buffer power. If this occurs, we buffer power literally in thousands of homes. And once the capacity is back and TenneT can transmit the power to the south, those storage systems re-inject the power to the grid so that it can be brought to the south. This is what we're doing, and we're doing this in a project together with IBM.
On IBM's blockchain technology.
Absolutely. IBM is the technology provider for the blockchain we are using in here.
And I think from you or someone else at Sonnen, I got this worded in a different way. What you're basically providing is you're providing a mesh that goes within this existing network, the existing transmission and electricity generation system that supports it and makes it stronger
Absolutely.
and more efficient. So
Absolutely.
it releases the need for more transmission, more storage, more generation.
Absolutely. This is exactly what's happening, and you can find dozens of studies from institutions and universities that proved that storage can really avoid grid infrastructure investments significantly. Yeah?
And you're the first to get into the blockchain use for this kind of work, right?
I think we are the first and the only ones having a virtual power plant based on residential storage units at all. And the more assets you have, the more important blockchain gets.
So I think you said at the beginning storage. I remember a few years ago or several years ago maybe when storage started getting integrated into wind turbines. And I think the first story we covered was a GE story of doing this. I know several players did it around the same time. How much is that widespread practice now with GE wind turbines? Is it just focused on specific regions that have transmission or excess generation issues, or what? How has that developed?
So, the technology is evolving in a speed that's unbelievable, as well as the price is declining. So you can see the price is declining. I think so. Solar dropped 80% in the last decade, and wind dropped 60% in the last decade. So if you see it, the price is evolving quickly, but equally the technology revolution is happening in an unbelievable pace. I think so. In wind, we're seeing a new machine by each developer each 15 months, 16 months. Right. We're seeing something coming up. So it's quite impressive. Some of these technologies would be actual to be able to capture that drop in price and that what do you need, these markets need. Some markets require a different sort of structure, would require hybrid because it would make much more sense, where you would have the solar during the daytime to capture majority of the sun, you'll have the wind at nighttime, and you'll back them up of storage to create that base load. A lot of the questions that many people, specifically when you speak with our colleagues from the thermal power, there is always that question, renewable is nice to have, but it cannot be a base load. And I think so this is the new dimension that you need to start focusing by implementing solar, wind, and storage. It can be a base load. Now, obviously, we're implementing and adding storage to multiple regions and multiple platforms of the technology, but it depends again on multiple, area, criteria. One of them is the grid capacity. The second one is what's the megawatt constraint that you're going to have? The wind speed. Would it add value economically? Because today people are looking at renewable no longer because, it's mainly about the price. So sometimes when you look at it, storage makes sense in certain geographies because it adds value. It makes sense in certain geographies because you'll be able to increase the output at a lower cost.
And do you see those regions expand? I mean, do you see just more and more that's the case?
Indeed, and we're seeing it. There is a huge demand for it in the MENAT region. As an example, we're already working on a couple of projects for storage, in North Africa and Pakistan and Turkey, in the Gulf, because it makes economic sense on the life cycle of the project.
Well, one of the fun stories, I mean, we talked about, solar and wind getting cost competitive with fossil fuels, nuclear, for years, and now they're generally the lowest cost option. But now we're hitting this point where it's solar plus batteries, wind plus batteries beat natural gas, coal, nuclear. And then you're at a very interesting stage where it's not just where you have this more robust competition.
It is, and if you look at it as an example, so the economic the economics of this equation is different for each region. And example, if you look at the Gulf today, most of the electricity generated, regardless renewable or not, is subsidized by the government heavily. So today, if you look at it, what's going to be the impact? So if you look as an example, Saudi Arabia that burns 1.5 million barrels on a daily basis. If you look exactly at how does that mean if you put it on the market with the current oil prices and the impact, what's going to be the impact? The carbon dioxide emission rate as well. And how can you create a new industry that will diversify completely? This region have a lot of youth. 30%, 70% of the population is below the age of 30. If you look today at renewable, not only from a power generation, but it's a complete change shift of mindset. And it can be a vehicle to create employment opportunities. Renewable business alone in the United States created 12 times more jobs than all of the industries together. So this can be a new vehicle that will transform the way that we look at the economic development as well.
And wind, which GE has led on, was the fastest growing industry in the United States in recent years. But unfortunately, you have to go to an important meeting, so we'll give her a big round of applause right now while she moves on to other important business. Thank you. Speaking to the youth, transitioned right to the next question I was going to get into. I talked with you for a while yesterday, and we'll have a longer article and video about this on Cleantechnica, but your development of the blue LED was almost accidental. I mean, not accidental, but it was more of it wasn't like I have a master vision of taking over the world. It was like, I have this problem I'm going to solve in this way. I have this problem I'm going to solve in this way. As she said, there's tremendous opportunity for job growth for the youth, but the youth might always have this challenge of too much pressure and too much, what should I do? I don't know what to do. There's so many big problems. I want to solve everything. What advice can you give to the youth who want to get into clean tech to help them, not be too daunted by the challenge and be inspired to keep going forward?
You mean research? I think just the most important thing is at first you like what you are doing, So that's the most important. So if you work for the renewable energy, you like to work for renewable. That's the most important thing. So if you don't like it, you have to switch to the different thing. That is the most important. And and also renewable energy. I think new energy is very important now. For my opinion. I don't know, wind and solar. I'm not familiar with cost. Everything determined by cost. Here I was surprised. I came here. Price of oil is very cheap. It's amazing cheap. So Abu Dhabi, it's very difficult to solar energy and wind energy because oil is so cheap.
But they also have the cheapest solar in the world now. So,
it's true. I don't know solar because everything the new energy is everything determined by price cost. I think so. So market, so now is oil relatively cheap, so oil is getting popular.
But your story too, I mean, you sound like you saw one little opportunity and you went with it, and then you saw another opportunity. You didn't have this vision, I'm going to become a Lifetime Achievement Award winner of Zayed Future Energy Prize. You had this vision of, hey, I'm going to solve this issue, then this one. So do you think there's sort of, we shouldn't maybe only look at the big picture, but also try to just look in our lives. What are we passionate about, as you say?
I think just in my case is I love to work for the research.
Yeah.
Any research is fine for me. So coincidentally, after joining a company, I had to work for LED materials. It's my company, former company, chemical company. Chemical company is making the material for LED. So coincidentally, I was involved in LED. That's the reason. So in my case, any research fine. Just coincidentally, my work was a LED related one, and gradually, I worked for the at that time only available LED, red LED, no blue, no green LEDs. In order to make any kind of colors, we need three primary. So that's the reason I gradually I had to develop blue and green LEDs.
Yeah, this is what's needed, blue and green.
Yeah. So in my case, any research fine. If at that time my research project was new technology, renewable energy, I was working for renewables.
And then the part I loved about it was, so you decided, okay, I need to develop blue and green.
Yes.
And then,
yes, the most important for research is you have to like research. That is most important.
And then the funniest part of the story for me, I think, was then you decided I want to get a PhD and I need to publish some research, some academic research. and you said there were like 1,000 papers on this kind of blue
yes,
LED and like 4 on this other kind. So you said, well, I'm going to go on this other route because it's not getting enough focus, and that's what ended up solving the issue, right?
Yes, so to achieve big breakthrough, we have to take a risk. So, take a risk. It's almost like a research, like gambling.
Yeah.
If all people go to this way, like gambling, possibility very small, but hit, it's a big money, So all people go this way, you have to go this way.
Yeah, I never thought about it. Researchers are just gamblers with a little more.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's most important. Yeah.
So Sonnen, again, I mean, I wouldn't. It's not an accident, but it sounds like your story again was a bit serendipity. It was a bit like you thought, hey, this is cool, we're going to work on this, and then you then you saw there's a market for it. Can you speak a little bit more about how you got into being a clean tech leader, being on stage for your clean tech leadership? Was it a lifelong goal, or was it an accident of sorts?
I mean, accident sounds a bit negative, but at the end of the day, my co-founder and I were absolutely passionate about the idea to be able to power our own house 24/7 with solar energy, regardless if the sun is shining or not. So this was the time when we started to build the first prototype in 2008, at a time where even in Germany, the entire solar industry was just about feeding power into the grid against a state-guaranteed feed-in tariff. So it was more or less a return on investment scheme than about renewable energies and the idea to save the planet and other things like this. But we wanted to have this for ourselves, and this is how it started. At the beginning it was a pure hardware play, so it was about a storage system, and it was by far too expensive. The first system was 25,000 euro, payback time 700 years, maybe even 800 years, I don't know, so by far too expensive. But we found other persons being enthusiastic about that, our friends, partly our friends, and they asked us if we can make this for them too, and then we decided to make a company, and we were really the very, very first company deploying residential battery-based storage in Germany.
And even when you started that company, you saw the tremendous return on investment consumers could get from it. I mean, did you say, okay, well, but the learning curve will bring down the costs and this, or were you again sort of just like, well, there's a market here that's interested, let's go forward with this and just develop as we can?
When we started, there was no market. We had no competition, but we had no customers either. So we had to make the market, and we had to find the early adopters which were ready to invest in such a device beyond economic rationale, right?
Yeah.
So this is how there was no market, and we had to build this market up. And still, the market is in a very early phase. It's still a small and relatively limited marketplace.
And so, all of you obviously have. It's a very difficult prize to win an award on the Zayed Future Energy Prize, and some people see prizes as maybe just sort of a glamorous, fun event. But can you speak a little bit more about how the Zayed Future Energy Prize and other prizes like it help to propel this kind of innovative, cutting-edge work, and help to propel this kind of support for going one step further? Any of you can speak up, maybe practical action.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, for practical action, in the first sense, just a real morale boost for the whole of the organization. We've been working in renewable energy for 40 years. So, I guess you make your luck by just trying harder and harder and accepting failure and then getting up and going again. And so an award like that, great boost for your own morale and the own sense of purpose inside the organization. I guess the next one is it's a real door opener. Mm-hmm. The prestige that comes with winning an award like the Zayed Future Energy Prize is a fantastic door opener for new partnerships and new relationships that you would otherwise not be able to get. And then the money gives you that extra opportunity to take another range of risks.
Money's good, yeah.
Money's always good, but it's not the only one by any means.
Do you have anything more on how the prize? You guys have won a few notable prizes now.
Yes, but I mean, it's not about every prize is special, first of all, and secondly, it's very important for the development of a young company, because what new technology has to struggle with is also a lack of attention and a lack of technology awareness. If you have the best solution in the world, which is economic and all this, but nobody knows about it, how can you sell it and how can you literally penetrate markets? So to get this attention, to get this awareness, this is, from my point of view, of course, the most important aspect of it. The second aspect is, yes, we are a technology company. We are investing a lot in the further development of our technology, and so the Zayed Future Energy Award helped us a lot on both sides, and this is why it was a very special prize for us.
And I know the Zayed Future Energy Prize has a very strong social component. They care a lot about the social impact, not just financial or economic, but across social issues. So it was nice to see that you jumped into Puerto Rico quickly after the disaster in Puerto Rico last year, and you actually went to Puerto Rico. It's easy for you to just say, hey, let's focus on the developed markets where there's an easy marketing base. What compelled you to get into Puerto Rico, and what have you learned from going into Puerto Rico with Sonnen?
Well, we are doing business with Puerto Rico since something like 2 years from our US subsidy in Atlanta, Georgia. And when this hurricane hit the island, everything was destroyed, everything. And it is part of the US in a way, it's a US territory, but on the other hand, we did not recognize a lot of help going there, and our partner in Puerto Rico called us and asked us for help. And so it was a duty and a normal thing for us to go there and really to help. And what we did is we deployed 15 off-grid microgrids, which we donated as well for social projects. And you mentioned cooking before. For example, we equipped at the corner of the island where the hurricane hit the island, literally everything is really destroyed, and we equipped a social center with a kitchen, actually. We got electric devices from Whirlpool, and we are powering this with solar and a Sonnen battery, and people have clean water now. We have a water cleaning system installed, and they can cook meals, and every day 200 to 400 people are coming there in order to do that. And we have in San Juan, for example, a laundry, again with Whirlpool washing machines, where people can come and wash their clothes, because they also lack sewage. Everything broke down on the island, so it was, from my point of view, a very good thing that we did, and I'm extremely proud on the business we did, but I'm even more proud that we can help with our technology people who are really in a severe problem.
And this is obviously a core focus of practical action. I mean, this is, there must be something, can you speak about the human side of seeing the impact of work in these communities where you're either helping to secure electricity or provide electricity, clean cooking?
Yeah, I mean, we could go on for days, I guess, and the sort of the transformative nature that energy has enables people to get a secure livelihood, to get access to basic services, to get a decent education for their kids. So many different ways energy enables people to get on with their lives.
And you said, yes, this panel is about innovation, and you highlighted yesterday in a conversation with me that we have to remember the long tail, and that we like to focus on the exciting new technologies that are being rolled out in the US.
So
or Europe.
I often remember that Thomas Edison patented the electric light bulb in 1879. So almost 140 years, and still there's almost 1 billion people who don't have access to that simple light bulb. And of course, with Professor, the Edison light bulb is gone, and the LED light bulb is now available to us, but it's still not available for so many people. So the technology, of course, is an enabler, but without the ecosystem behind it, without the financing,
without
the policies,
innovation in organizational
capabilities, people, civil society awareness, then that, like the Thomas Edison light bulb, the LED light bulb could stay out of reach for that same 1 billion people as they are today. And it's interesting, World Bank, with an enormous amount of effort in the last few years on energy access for all. But over the last year, the number of people registered as not connected to an electrical source has moved from 1.06 billion down to 1.05 billion. It's not moving. So a lot more needs to change, and the technology as an enabler is there. Now we need the financing, the policies, the capacity.
I mean, this is what I hear.
Behind that.
I don't know how many years I've been here for the Zayed Future Energy Prize, and there's so many organizations and small companies that have been awarded or been finalists that are, targeting this. It's obviously a testament to the prize that they've focused on companies and organizations that do this. But over and over, it's the message is the technology is there. It's building the social capacity. It's building the relationships, marketing to these certain places, breaking down financial or regulatory barriers. So it's really this organizational innovation that's needed more than maybe technological innovation today. But getting back to technological innovation, so LEDs, I think surprised a lot of us like solar and wind with how fast the cost came down, how fast they rolled out across the market. But they're sort of old news, right? What's next in lighting? What are you working on now?
Now I'm working on laser lighting.
Laser lighting.
Laser lighting. So right now, to make a lighting, we use blue LEDs. Instead of blue LED, we can use blue laser diode. So in this blue laser diode, the current density is 3 orders higher than the blue LED. So it means the same size of chip, 1,000 times brighter.
1,000 times brighter than?
Yes, better than blue LED.
Than blue LED.
Yeah. So white lighting, same, 1,000 times brighter using laser lighting.
But is it a problem for you to undercut your great invention? It's not. You don't have a psychological. I don't want to I don't want to defeat blue LEDs.
Blue laser diode is also my invention.
Okay.
So it's okay. So this laser lighting already is for the automobile headlamp. But the next target is this general lighting. So yeah. So in order for generating, we have to reduce the cost.
And is this getting into commercial application yet, or is it?
Yeah, already for automobile headlamp. Already they use laser lighting.
Automotive headlamps.
Especially German car, Audi, BMW already use laser lighting for.
It's very hot. I think with car people, there's a demand now for laser lights. It's better, right?
Yes.
And I mean, how do you see that transfer? Do you see laser lighting coming into the conference room, into the office, into the home, like LEDs did, like sort of?
Yes, right now so special lighting especially for for baseball stadium. They need a very strong light, no? So the laser lighting is the best for the baseball stadium and big stadium.
I know you live in the U.S. Do you watch baseball? You like that?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
Yes.
If you're outside of U.S. or Japan, maybe it's not such a. So, getting back to blockchain, because it's hot. Everybody talks about it. Nobody knows what's really going on. Can you simplify a little bit why you saw blockchain as important for this for the Sonnen community, for this relationship with tenant? Why couldn't you just do a normal? What's special about blockchain that allowed you to?
Well, blockchain is a technology which is first of all very reliable. And at the end of the day, it is about knowing exactly who injected power into the grid or took power from the grid when and where. Yeah? So we need clarity and reliability here, and we need a technology which is cheap and scalable, and this is why blockchain is exactly the right thing to use.
So it's sort of decentralized. In a way, it's a decentralization of.
Yeah, it is about a very clear identification. It's like a fingerprint at the end of the day. It's like if you get a bill, for example, and this bill is signed with the fingerprint, you know exactly from whom it's coming. But this is more than that, because you know exactly the transaction, even with all the details. This is a way of making this clear, and this is why blockchain is not only, but also very, very, very valid technology for the energy sector.
Because the old system you would have, if you had these solar and battery homeowners, if you wanted to sell their capacity, they would have to go through Sonnen's, administrative department.
Absolutely.
Then you would have to go through that administrative department in relationship with tenant.
Absolutely.
And now with blockchain, you're able to say, hey, let's just form a direct relationship between all of these homeowners and tenant.
Every single transaction can be identified in a clear way. And as the energy business is getting decentralized more and more and gets more participants as well, we are talking about millions of assets and millions of players in this energy world only in one country, it becomes extremely important to be able to really track every transaction in a very safe and reliable way, and also in a cost-efficient way.
And so it's got a very complementary focus with grids in Europe, US, Australia. Does it also enable anything off-grid in the developing markets, or is it sort of at an early stage where those dots haven't been connected so much? How blockchain could quicken the energy access to 1.05 billion people?
You're asking me.
I was asking. Yeah, I was either one of you. Yeah.
Christoph knows more about blockchain than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that international non-government organizations are engaging in blockchain, looking at cash transactions, for example. So in a crisis like in Puerto Rico, or a crisis perhaps like in Syria, where people need money to be able to immediately buy food or clothes for their kids, that blockchain can be used as an incredibly effective, transparent, traceable way to give people who need money in a very fast way. So there's a real power in blockchain, but so many people I meet, blockchain's it's a mystery.
It's a mystery. Yeah, we have a long series where we're trying to demystify it, but it's very hard because in any of these articles, it's still pretty dense, and you still have to start learning jargon very quickly.
So my mum got an iPhone X for Christmas this year. All she wants to do is make a phone call.
Yeah.
But she's got a whole world of computing in her hands.
Well, I hear about a president who has a smartphone and he only has Twitter as the only app he uses. I've heard this is the case. I don't know for sure. I've heard it creates problems as well, but I can't say anything about it. But one organization we've looked at too, I think it's called Power Ledger, is looking to build microgrids using blockchain technology. But the question that came to mind was that you still need the grid infrastructure, you still need the transmission infrastructure, you still need someone managing that. So you can't just put homes and solar and battery out there and connect them through blockchain. They still need a microgrid or a grid. I mean, can you say anything about the balance between off-grid microgrids, large grids, just straight up off-grid properties? Do you think it's going to change much in the coming decades, or do you think we're going to have a system similar to what we have today, but more efficient and more stable and cleaner? Christoph.
Okay. Well, I think first of all, coming back to blockchain does not really make sense in small microgrid situations, because the strength is really that it's scalable and it's for large systems with a lot of action points, right? I think that all developed countries having a grid infrastructure today will keep the grid infrastructure because simply it makes sense.
Even Australia.
Even Australia, absolutely.
There's a lot of talk in Australia about this potential shift.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to go off-grid, but nobody wants to have the problems also with going off-grid when something is going wrong and being out of power. This can always happen, and I think that thinking about connecting renewable energy generation and use at the same time via a grid has also a lot of advantages with the virtual power plant, for example. So I do not see developed countries going off-grid. And of course, we need off-grid solutions at the same time for special situations or for developing countries as well, right?
And I think one of our readers, I think it was a reader named Bob Wallace years ago, mentioned the grid is like a giant battery. Why would you get rid of the giant battery that is your support? There's a great support and efficiency. So it's more about making it more efficient and cleaner,
absolutely,
and more integrated, more distributed prosumer use and whatnot. Well, thank you to everyone. I think is our time up, or do we have time for? Yeah, who's directing? I think my time is up, but I'm not sure. 2 minutes. Can we take questions from the audience, or is that not a capability? Right? Yeah, we can Anybody have questions in the audience for any of the wonderful winners of this and last year's Zayed Future Energy Prize? It's totally true that I would look red if it wasn't for blue LEDs. He said it. He's the inventor of the blue LED, so you can believe him.
Yes, thank you. I'm the chair of the American Renewable Energy Institute. Came here to learn about many things, and first I want to congratulate all of you who won the Zayed Prize. That's a really big accomplishment. Congratulations. On the conversation regarding the cryptocurrency and the blockchain as applied to the grid solutions to go from a centralized world to decentralized, I'm very curious about how you see this happening, not only in Germany, but also how that can apply, at scale, speed and scale, in other places, like, for instance, the United States, which is really digging its heels in right now in terms of the transformation of the energy systems, and yet it seems that the blockchain is something that simply will not be denied. Could you comment a little bit more about how you see this interface of energy and cryptocurrency technology?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think that, especially in the United States, it's rather a regulatory issue. In Germany, we have a very good precondition for technologies like this because we have a deregulated market. Power generation and the grid is separated, and at the end of the day, literally everybody, can use the grid under certain circumstances and has to pay grid fee. This is for sure. So, from the regulatory standpoint, I think in the US it is a different ballgame. It's extremely complex. You have many different states, and even within a state, you have different utilities with own rules of the game partly. So this is, from my point of view, the main challenge. Otherwise, I think blockchain technology can, of course, perfectly apply at the US as well and globally. The only question is how fast regulators can react on that.
Any more questions? So thank you to the panelists and for everything you do to help the world, basically, to help bring clean energy, clean cooking, clean electricity and lighting to more and more people, and potentially win the race with global warming. Right?
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you.